This is BarCode, a cocktail-powered podcast that dives deep into the personalities, criminals, and heroes that have come to define security across the globe. Please join our host, Chris Glandon, for another wild foray into the incredible world of humans and how they intertwine with today's modern technology. We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Activate.
Welcome to BarCode. I'm your host, Chris Glandon, and today we're with Jim West. Jim possesses over 34 years of experience in information technology, with more than 26 years focused specifically within cybersecurity. He's worked across sectors like commercial, space, federal, and defense, developing expertise in biometrics, risk management, security analysis, and more. Also, Jim is well-versed in the future impacts of quantum computing on cybersecurity. He speaks at global security conferences and is also an award-winning author, with his book making it to the 100 Best Cybersecurity Books of All Time list by bookauthority.org. Jim, thanks for stopping by BarCode, man. It's great to finally meet you.
Oh, Chris, likewise. It's great to finally meet you as well.
Like I was saying to you earlier, man, it's I feel like we should have met in person because I think we travel in parallel. We go to the same conferences. We talk to the same group of people. So hopefully I'll see you soon, sometime in 2026, and definitely at Hacker Summer Camp.
Of course.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm already on a couple agendas already. I'll be in Vegas in May for ISACA North America. I'll be pretty much every ISACA event this year I'm going to be at. They've already got me, I think, also at the GRC in San Diego, which is a little bit later in the year. And then I think ISACA Europe. So I'll be at all three ISACA events. I should be back at Hacker Halted and Global CISO Forum with EC Council in Atlanta. So that might be another opportunity for us to cross paths. And I don't know when I'm going to ever submit a topic yet to DEF CON. For so many years when I did work with a particular program with the government, I had been asked to do a presentation on commercial solutions for classified or dual encryption architecture systems, but I was asked politely to not present on that. But now that it's been about that was since like 2016, 2017. I might come back around and start presenting papers again to DEF CON. That's on my list of conferences. To me, speaking at DEF CON would be one of the Mount Everest of conferences to speak at. I mean, Black Hat's probably a distant number two. No offense to Black Hat, but to me, DEF CON is the Mount Everest. And of course, being featured on Wired magazine would be another dream of mine. But hey, that's the ego talkings.
You're on your way, man. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I love the content that you push. I just started speaking at conferences myself not long ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And a mutual friend of ours, Len No, pushed me into that realm. I was always into podcasts. I'm talking into a camera, speaking into a mic, but, talking in front of a crowd is different for me. So I'm starting to try to, master that a little bit because it is a different energy. It's a different energy that you bring. And once you do it, for me at least, it becomes addictive,
Oh, it is. One of the first big conferences I spoke at was 2017. It was the NSA's IA symposium that they have in Baltimore. And it was a little daunting because, on day one is always the big day of any conference. That's where all the VIPs and everybody come out. And so first thing in the morning, I was the second hour of the day, but first thing in the morning, the big stage room, they have like some rear admiral, trying to talk cyber, which, they're just a talking head, no offense, but they're not real cyber folks. But I'm the second hour, and I know the two rooms next to me has a CSFC panel, which is a NSA program called Commercial Solutions for Classified. But they got a panel of people like from HP, Aruba. They got all these engineers like, double, triple CCIE folks that are in that panel. I'm like, they're going to have a big draw of people. There's no way. And in my room, there's 80 chairs in my room. And so 10 minutes before I'm to start, I'm thinking in my head, okay, if I just have like just five people, I'll be happy. Well, I tell you, the room filled up all the seats. It was 80 people, standing room only on the sides. And then outside the double doors, they left them open for the people in the hall to hear me speak. It
Wow.
was one of the more humbling moments of my life because I didn't know how many people in government had read a paper I did long ago, Beyond the CIA Triad, and they came to hear that because a lot of folks, we hear about the CIA Triad, the confidentiality, integrity, availability. A lot of folks don't realize there's 9 security principles, and the NSA, when they do their security engineering process, they run it through the lens of 9 security principles. And so I did a paper that explained them, but I also created a triple triad that overlays a 9-point star, but there are 3 triads. And the NSA, it's unofficial required reading for all new hires in the CSD director, the cybersecurity directorate, because it explains the engineering process, at least the perspectives, very elegantly, and people can wrap their heads around it within less than like 20 minutes, as opposed to taking weeks to try to figure it out.
Nice. Nice. Love it, man. And just for those that are watching, I got my hood on, but I'm not trying to be super hacker here. It's just freezing cold in my office. So this is legit reason why I'm wearing this hood today.
Yeah. I mean, well, you need the dark lighting and the keyboard.
I do. Yeah, I need the dark lighting. I got my mask hanging up in the corner, but we'll leave that
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
So Jim, yeah, if you don't mind, I'd love to find out more about you and your origin story. If you don't mind just talking me through sort of your background, how you came up and how you first got into the security field.
So I'm going to start at go way, way back. I actually grew up in the foster care system of Central Louisiana. And what's interesting, actually, I'm going in a few weeks back to Louisiana, back to Vernon Parish, to a small town called Evans, Louisiana. And if you Google it, it's in the middle of the woods, folks. But it's a small kindergarten through 12th grade at the same campus. But going to speak to the students there because, there's not a lot of success stories where people could see someone that's been to 100 plus countries, had 2 successful careers, and did all the things I've accomplished. So I'm going back to motivate and inspire the students so to continue their education because, my origin story came from books, came from reading. In the 5th grade, I already had straight A's, but the teacher said if you do an essay on any subject you want, you get bonus points. So I went to the library, checked out the A in the encyclopedia set, and I went all the way to Z writing on every subject in the encyclopedia set. So to this day, if there's any trivia night anywhere, I'm a dead ringer for trivia nights and Jeopardy.
And for those that don't know what an encyclopedia set is, it's like Google in print format.
Wikipedia in print format, A through Z. But yeah, there used to be books where you had to get your information. You just couldn't type in what is a blank or ChatGPT it. But yeah, thank you for that. I definitely have earned that coming up story through the books to, now everything's digital. But yeah, that's what it was. It was love of books. I love Jules Verne, of course, Tolkien. But Jules Verne, the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was one of my favorite books of all time. Of course, Around the World in 80 Days. And it was those books that kind of took my mind and my imagination, got to see the world through books. And then I used that education to keep reading, learning, and just because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to school for cyber IT. I was building 386, 46DX, and that's really going to age me for some folks. They're back when it was like 9600 baud modems. I was building computers in my apartment just so I could play Quake, and play Doom, and Descent. Descent was one of my favorite games back then. And CD-ROMs are only like 2x speed CD-ROM. So that really dates me right there. But from building computers, I found out, wait a minute, I can order the parts for about $800 to $1,000 and I could sell this for $3,000. So that's one of my early side hustles was just building PCs, selling them to doctors' offices and even training people how to use them. So I started real early, just educating people, training people. So that was something that's always been part of me and my career, even to this day when later in life where certifications became all the rage because I was working for the government without any certifications. And then they had this thing called 8570 for those that are working government defense contract and they're familiar with this, where you had to have a certain cert for your certain role. And I was an information assurance manager at the time, and I needed this cert called the CISSP. And this is back in the Sean Harris days. So folks, again, dating myself again, Sean Harris, gone too soon. But she had been kind of like the grandmother of cybersecurity, if you will, with the CISSP from ISC Squared. And so in pursuit of that cert, I ended up, because I almost lost my job because I didn't have the cert. And this is back when it was Scantron, 250 questions, 6 hours. I did it in about an hour, 50 minutes. And I passed, but you had to wait 4 to 6 weeks for your results. But in that time, I went and got like SEC plus CEH. I ended up, I told myself, I'm never going to have another problem not having a cert for the job. So I got 1 to 2, 3 certs in every one of those boxes in 8570. So that when, 4 or 6 months later, I was able to say I was 8570 certified, meaning the whole box, I was certified. And then since then, I usually do anywhere from 2 to 6 certifications a year on average, because as I learn new technology, like when cloud came out, cloud certifications, as I'm studying about the tech or the service, I naturally said, well, I've already learned about it. Let me go get the cert in it. And so I've accumulated about 3-4 pages of training and certifications. I do about 400 to 600 continuing education hours a year. This year, we're just now almost at about 2/3 of the way through January, and I have over 100 hours already for 2026. But last year I did 23 certifications, to include 2 very obscure systems engineering or model building engineering, but that's another story for another time. And
So
I
you're
did
a
those
big
2 out of
believer in
spite.
certs
Just to
then.
kind of leave a little thing there for another story at another time. I did 2 certifications out of spite for a particular program with the government, where people said that all my 30-some years of experience and all the other engineering processes that I'm an expert in wouldn't correlate into their little special, it's called MBSE, Model Building Systems Engineering. And
Okay.
so, not to name any organizations, but they may say, well, Mr. West, you're not quite right with that. Your experience and knowledge would correlate. I said, look, I'm going to go take these 2 certs that you guys got and pass them with 0 study, because I'm right. I passed the first cert in 50 minutes, and what I found out, it was the advanced level 3. So if anyone looks up the OMG SysML advanced, the 2 gentlemen I was speaking to have the user level, which is level 1. I passed level 3, 74th in the world, no study. And so then of course they still had their doubts. I took the other one they had, which is the INCOSE's CSEP. It's only $80 to take the exam. I'm not going to become a full member because I don't have any interest in it. But I passed the exam in 31 minutes flat, which is 16 seconds a question.
Jeez.
So again, I did that out of spite. So that's just to show you, if you want to know who I am driven by hatred and spite sometimes. But I like
man,
to beat people with knowledge.
Yeah. No, that's a primary driver, man. You gotta prove them wrong sometimes.
Gotta prove people wrong. And hey, what better way to do it than gaining the knowledge, reading? I tell people, if people are like, oh, I wish I was smarter. I said, man, all you need to do is, if you could read and comprehend, you could do anything. You could be a pen tester. You could be a hacker. Most hackers are just people that just wanted to figure something out. And that's it. They just kept trying. We get it wrong 1,000+ times, but eventually you get it wrong, and it's like, okay, now I know how to do it. And it's largely routine driven, Yeah. And so that's what I tell people. It's just like learning a guitar, learning to play a piano. You just got to get past that first 20 hours of mess ups and aggravation. And I think there's a TED Talk on it, the first 20 hours. If you get past the first 20 hours, you're ahead of 80% of the world.
Interesting. So would you say reading is still your primary source of learning, even when you're preparing for certification?
Yes, of course it's reading. I mean, obviously, I call it YouTube University, but, I'm a visual learner like most of the population of the planet. So obviously, if I could find, there's Proud Nerd, there's a lot of great YouTube channels, Dion, that you could watch their videos, and they got a great way to explain it so you could quickly wrap your head around it. So I definitely do what I call YouTube University. Another great tool for people out there, if you're just talking certification preparation, I tell this a lot of folks, Google the cert with Reddit. Find a subreddit of some people that are taking that cert and just kind of filter by like the last 6 months to a year. And that's what I love about the Reddit community and the Reddit army is people come together, they share information. It's more helpful than critical. But a lot of folks will share like, hey, this YouTube channel helped me. Hey, this book by so-and-so helped me. They'll share what they use to pass the exam. And then that's good resources to pull from to help you come up with your study plan and approach.
Yeah, I like that approach, because then you're talking to people that actually have experienced it, and you're not just reading, a one-pager from the certificate provider. So I did a boot camp once. I think it was my first conference. My first conference was actually Hacker Halted in 2012.
Nice.
And I was brand new to security. My background is IT. So coming up through IT, but first security conference was Hacker Halted, and I took the CEH version 3, I believe it was, version 3 boot camp. And that was my first boot camp. So I really had no security experience, no experience in boot camps. And I barely failed, came back, studied again, and passed. But I think the boot camp approach helped me at least really, I don't know. I think it works for some people and doesn't work for others. Like, I think some people get burnt out with it. Have you ever taken a boot camp, or what are your thoughts on just like that high intensity type training in preparation for a cert?
So so I've never taken a boot camp, and not to knock them, but sometimes it can be very costly and expensive. And a lot of us, we don't have infinite amounts of money, right? The biggest skill when it comes to CEH and like pen testing things, the 1,000,001 people on the internet is going to tell you, try Hack Me, Hack the Box, and they're wonderful resources. But there's no better resource, and I'm going to be brutally honest. Those sites are great. Getting you introduced to things and learning how to do those particular routines for the particular tasks they got. It's splendid. They're doing a great thing for the world. But there's nothing beats just loading up a VM on your machine, downloading the Kali Linux distro. And folks, if you've heard of Kali Linux, I'm going to just throw a shout out to the CSI Linux folks, because that's the digital forensics toolkit. But just downloading some of these distros and just getting your hands dirty. Pull up a YouTube video of an expert pen tester that's showing you this is how you do, Meterpreter, how to run a reverse shell in Windows, and just pause the video and say, okay, now let me do what he just did. There's no better way than doing that, because it's learn at your own pace. Whereas a boot camp, you're on that instructor's pace and instructor's time. And if it didn't stick, most of us don't want to raise our hands and say, can you say that again? Can you slow down? Because we don't want to feel dumb and stupid amongst the class, even if it's virtual. A lot of us are too ashamed to say, hey, slow down. Can you say it again? And that's a shame, because that's, human nature. We don't want to appear to be slow. But when I say you play the YouTube video, run the VirtualBox or your virtual machine and run the distros yourself and learn how to do these things, at your own pace, that's really the best way to learn. It's like taking apart the radio, see if I could put it back together like we did when we were kids, see if we can make it work again, just to see how it worked. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, true hacking is that. Figuring out how something works, how can we maybe make it better, more efficient, or how can we just make it work again? But how can we deconstruct, reconstruct? Yeah.
I agree. I think that you have the certificate part of that, but then you also have that critical thinking part of that, which you learn to get through as you're, preparing for the exam. So that's a great point.
I'll take it a step further. When it comes to, you alluding to the experience and the hands-on versus the cert, doing the question part. Let's just keep it real. If I was to walk into DEF CON and say, I got a Pen Plus, or the one I have, the G-Pen, GAIAC pen penetration tester, I'm going to get laughed out the room, because really, honestly, there's only like 5, 6, 7, I think there's 7 practicals in the G-Pen. Very soft to cert when it comes to the actual hands-on, right? But if someone walks in and says an OSCP, offensive security, I'm another shout out to offensive security. Those are some great certification. They're worth their weight in gold, because they're all practical. And so if you walk around and say, I got an OSCP, immediate respect, because they know that you did the practicals, and then some of those practicals run 24 plus hours even. They give you access to accomplish all these things. And that has what I call street cred in industry, because again, I walk in a room, you try to say, oh, I got my CompTIA Pen Plus, you can get laughed at. Or they might not laugh out loud to you, but they're going to be like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And then G-Pen, even though G-Pen costs a lot of money, and that's one, I'm not a big fan of SAN certs, but they do cost a lot of money, usually about $1,000 for the cert attempt, and they don't have many practicals. And so you look at OSCP all the way to like OOIE and all the other acronyms they got along their pipeline. I tell you folks, if you did have the money, if your company's willing to pay for it, they do have a program and again, I don't mean to plug them, but that's how much I believe in them. I think they give you a program for 1 year. You have unlimited retakes, so you can take as many of their exams in 1 year. It's a little price. I want to say it's like $6,000, $7,000, but if you can get somebody else to pay for it, like some kind of college fund or a company, and you got the time to dedicate it and tear down some certs, that's the best value for your money. But bottom line is, if you want to get into true pen testing and auditing and so forth, OSCP, start with that one and then work your way from there, because it's worth its weight in gold.
Good deal. I want to shift to quantum computing for a moment. Regardless of what conference I'm at, the topic of quantum computing is just becoming more prevalent in the community. In fact, I'm good friends with the folks that run Quantum Village at DEF CON, Mark Carney and Victoria Kumaran, and they were just at B-Sides Delaware. So I'm glad to see the community get more involved with quantum and how it relates to cyber. But it's definitely accelerating in conversations, and it's awareness that it will revolutionize cyber. I think NIST has done some research and paperwork when it comes to post-quantum cryptography, but still, I think generally there's a lot of people that I come in contact with that just don't understand what it means for us as an industry. And since this is an area that you focus on, I would love to get your perspective on that, how it would impact us, considering both, the attacker advantages as well as defensive advantages, because I think it plays on both sides of that coin. So we'd love to get your perspective on that and what you have seen.
So I've been talking on quantum since 2016, and I have a couple of little pet peeves I got to air out. And I'm sorry, it's your platform I'm going to air it out on, but
No, definitely.
LinkedIn for the past year and a half, I'm amazed every day when I come across people's profiles that all these quantum and AI experts have sprung up out of the woodwork. Hallelujah. So I'll leave that there. So if you get the sense of sarcasm, I'll leave that there. But I have been talking, and now I know there's been quantum physicists, scientists, and other researchers that have been working on this for 15, 20 years. So trust me, I'm even coming in late in the game at 2016. But at 2016, I started speaking about the threats of quantum computing. And my focus was, when I kind of looked at what the NIST and everybody was targeting and replacing RSA and the ones that we knew that there were side channel attack possibilities, and they have been proven now theoretically. That's why we have the new lattice-based algorithms like the lithium kybers and so forth to replace those. Those are asymmetric algorithms for encryption. The issue is there's one that's still carried over because of entropy, and I can talk a little bit about that in a second. But AES-256 is still the darling for symmetric encryption. In fact, as far as symmetric encryptions go, it's like 98% of the internet. For symmetric encryption systems, or rather another term would be shared key encryption. So it's the darling right now, right? And because of the theoretical math behind the key space, the math behind the key space, rather, how many potential keys there are, that's kind of like the randomness, right? And so the simple way I usually explain to people, and again, if I'm preaching to the choir, my apologies, but it's just part of the train of the consciousness coming. Math is like 1 + 1 = 2, right? So when you think of mathematical equations, they usually have a consistent result. So the reason why people are like, well, why don't we get some smart, brainy people to come up with just new algorithms on the fly? It's not that easy, folks, because it's, even though it might be 2 or 3 mathematicians that the encryption algorithm gets named after, like RSA, for example, there's usually hundreds of other mathematicians working on their team with them. It's kind of like Steve Jobs didn't make the iPhone. He had thousands and thousands of engineers and scientists and people working on the project, right? But sometimes the poster child is the people that get their name associated with the project. But all these mathematicians got to work together to come up with a way that there's something that's consistent enough to produce this key space, right? But yet at the same time give this sense of randomness, because the problem with algorithms, they're not so random. The idea is that if you get a machine powerful enough that you can brute force the rough math is half the key space, meaning rendering it to a theoretical coin flip, you can defeat an algorithm, right? If you had that much compute within a certain amount of time. So you have compute and time. So when you start doing the math, when we hear like, for example, we're in what I call the quantum chipset wars is what I believe we're in. That's not being called that. I'm calling it that. But what we've had happen in 2025, Google AI Willow was the first chip that came out with this big splashy report that said it did some routine that would take a regular supercomputer like 6 septillion years to run this routine. Of course, everybody started losing their minds over that numbers, because that's the bullet point, right? That's the thing that gets you to click the thing. But you got to really read through all the articles and the paperwork around it to know what was the routine they were running, what was the problem they were trying to solve, because then you get an understanding what the problem is geared towards. Mm-hmm. People immediately assumed that they could apply that to encryption. Whole different ballgame, because it's a bigger pool of numbers and it's a bigger focus. And people throw out, like in classical computers, we have a thing called Shor's algorithm, right? To talk about how to defeat crypto things, or the exponential power of classical computing under Shor's algorithm. But in quantum computing, we have a thing called Grover's iteration, which is a way of exponentially increasing as qubits increase and error correction goes to near 99.99%, how you can exponentially go through and tear through a lot of data, if you will, exponentially, with superposition in particular. With all that being said, I know I throw a lot of terms there that I might need to explain, but you can question me anytime, Chris. But the general idea is if you can get through half the key space, it can render the encryption method ineffective, right? So the idea is that one day, we don't know when, but there's going to be a super powerful quantum computer that will be deemed a supercomputer, whether it's 1,000 qubits, 10,000, or 1,000,000 qubits. And if the error correction is 99.99%, or even at 100%, if it can reach that threshold, we may have a chance where that system could defeat certain algorithms. And so this post-quantum cryptography, as you mentioned, has been deemed, at least for now, to be quantum resistant. The key word here is, like in fires, there's fire resistant, fireproof. Obviously, you want something to be fireproof if you're going into a burning building. With quantum, they're just calling it post-quantum cryptography. Post-quantum, because quantum is here, right? But here's the thing. You will not see the government yet say quantum proof, because we haven't tested it against what would be deemed a quantum supercomputer yet. So if anyone in government wants to be the pariah and say, this is the line where a quantum supercomputer begins, they're going to probably have half the quantum scientists in the world just laugh at them. So until a group of quantum scientists say, this is the line that we draw in for a quantum supremacy, a quantum supercomputer, then that's what I'd wait for. But with that being said, post-quantum cryptography is a goal, meaning we should be planning to move to these algorithms, because once quantum computers become more prevalent and error correction is high, within less than a decade, I don't want to give an exact year, but I would say in less than 10 years from now, we will have systems that can break the current classical algorithms that we were using. So migrating or having a plan to migrate. So what I do, I have a presentation I've been talking about for years, and I've upgraded it last year, called Encryption Endgame. And I talk about the theoretical Q-day, but I talk about a solution, because one thing is to scare people like, oh, it's going to defeat, it's going to store now, read later, it's going to decrypt all your data, and we're going to have all this geopolitical issues and trade secrets will be out there. Besides just the doom and gloom, I offer people insight into an NSA program called Commercial Solutions for Classified. And in this program, it's publicly, you can look it up on the internet, folks. I'm not saying anything classified, but they publish what's called capability package, like data at rest, wireless, mobile capability packages, where you can arrange commercial products to protect up to classified and in some limited cases, top secret voice data. So if it's good enough for classified secret data for the government, then hey, it's good enough for secret Coca-Cola, trade secrets, copyrighted material, IP, and so forth. So that's why I encourage companies to look at CSSC, become knowledgeable of it. But what most companies are doing these days is something called zero trust architecture, ZTA. That's the kind of the hotness now for security architecture. And that kind of got birthed out of CSFC. So if you remember a few years ago, back when the DLP rage was on and they had IDAM solutions, IAM, Identity Access Management, ID Access Management, IDAM. So IDAM met a little bit of encryption principles from the CSSC solution. It kind of made a baby called ZTA. So the approach is very similar to CSSC, with the exception of increased monitoring and a second layer of encryption layer. And then you have a CSSC solution. And the reason why I tell people just become knowledgeable about the program, it's a Google search away, read a few documents, read and comprehend a few documents. And it's for everybody to read and know about. And the best thing is they have a trusted components list. And I'm sorry to go run on this.
No, you're fine.
The trusted components list on the NSA, they publish where these products like Cisco, Juniper, your usual suspects of commercial products that have been tested by a third-party independent lab to be able to meet a particular protection profile, like a common criteria or NIAP protection profile. So that's been vetted. So now if you're doing like a tech refresh, whatever business you're working is going to reflect, the layer 2 environment, switches, routers. Why not just check that list real quick and say, hey, let's just order this Cisco router instead of this one. It's been vetted and blessed by the NSA, so that if we had to migrate, we know that this has already been tested against protection profiles that meets the assurance level for security. If it's good enough for the NSA, it's good enough for our commercial businesses. So that's what I actually advocate for in this. When I'm talking to people in the room, they might not be ready to go to 2 layers of encryption, but guess what? If they got a tech refresh in the next 1 to 3 years, that's a tidbit information they could take back to the office and say, hey, let's look at these products when we do our orders and acquire our new network devices, our endpoints, our MDMs for our mobile devices, whatever is in our environment. Let's look there first. And that's the biggest thing that I give people is to do that. So that way, 8-10 years now, they already got those components in their environment. They just need to modify their architecture slightly, and they could be in a CSSC solution a little sooner than later.
Interesting. So that framework is really what organizations should be looking at or considering to prepare for Q-day.
Yes.
Or Q-day in terms of what attackers will be capable of doing, which, from my understanding, I guess the primary use case from an attacker standpoint would be breaking current encryption standards, right? Is that pretty much what the fear is when that hits?
So that's a primary, right? Anything you want to keep private and secret, being out in the public is the number one concern, right? But right. I think there are other concerns, but maybe not initially, because you have to think, if anyone's going to put a significant, because quantum computers are expensive. Let's just start there. So the only folks that are going to be running these things are, like, I would say Fortune 100s, not even Fortune 500s, maybe your Fortune 100s, because I think Rigetti just sold one for like around $7 million. So again, we're talking millions of dollars to get these different scale and size, qubit size quantum computers. So from nefarious actors outside of nation state, we're looking at organized crime or crime hacker syndicates, if you will. So maybe if they pull their money together, they'll throw a few $1 million at one, right? But then to me, it's like, but then it would just be as easy for them to wait for someone like Amazon, which is what we're speculating is going to come out with quantum as a service. Just like we had all these cloud as a service platforms for different purposes and so forth for cloud, they're more than likely going to come up with quantum as a service, where you'll take your regular computing environment and certain jobs you will send into the quantum as a service, and it'll run on their platform and return results to you. So with that being said, I want to clear up a big myth, because a lot of folks are like, well, when am I going to have a quantum computer on my desk in my office?
Yeah.
We're a very, very long time from that, because at the end of the day, I'll challenge anyone. If you want to really learn about quantum, IBM has a program called Qiskit. That's Qiskket. You can go on IBM Qiskit. You can sign up for a free account. They have this library of documentation you can read, a bunch of training material, and you can actually learn how to code on a quantum circuit. So if you really want to get your hands dirty, you can sign up for free there. But here's the thing: once you start trying to learn that, it's not Python. It's not Linux scripting. It's far beyond anything that you're used to. So you do have to get trained on how to do it. With that being said, that poses what people are comfortable doing today with hacking and attacks, what they're comfortable with today. So I think we have a greater threat already that we've seen already with AI augmenting attacks, or attack approaches would be the more appropriate term I'd use, because AI system can come up with, these are the challenges. You can feed it all this information. It will find the way to hack and crack into that environment. And that's the beauty of AI. I look at AI as almost like kind of like Doctor Strange in Endgame or Infinity War, where you sat there looking at the millions of combinations, and the one way to make it through this scenario, there's one way. And that's what AI is going to do for hackers, is help find the one way with the right sequence, the right pretexting, if you will, when you're like phishing and trying to attack. Because you can feed it the profile, like the MGM hack. That's one that was a big one about a year plus ago, where they just use old school social engineering, and they use a sense of urgency, and an admin probably on his day off said, yeah, here's my password, dumbest thing ever. But it was basic social engineering. It's still well and alive. But imagine that AI helps these people that don't have English as their primary language, because sometimes you'll get these phishing or attempts to extort money out of you that are the language is stupid, it doesn't make sense. But AI is the bridge for all that. It makes it sound legitimate. You can start feeding it social media profiles, and the next thing you know, and with the deepfake technology, with the music generation and the video, you might end up having a video call. Because, okay, let's stop for a moment. A year ago, people were dogging out generative AI. It's got extra fingers on the hands. It's like weird morphing hallucinations. That was a year ago.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. They got full motion HD video they can create. People are making movies with AI now. So that's the kind of level of quality and consistency we got within less than a year. Now imagine another year from now. Everything's just growing exponentially. So then say, okay, 5 years from this moment of this podcast, they could be people making podcasts that they're higher quality than we are, and it would seem like they're talking for hours on end intelligently, and it's like, wow, it's fake. And that's
I'm
where
still
we're heading
sleeping.
to. Exactly. But with that being said, just imagine that pretexting, where you get a call on your phone and there's a video call. It's from your boss, and you know what your boss looks like, but the AI does too. And it's your boss telling you, I need you to go do this right now. You're going to lose your job. Well, you're going to do what the boss says. So I think we have greater immediate threats from AI, as AI gets exponentially better and higher quality and better results. It's better for us for generative purpose, but it's a two-edged sword. It's better for everybody, to include the bad actors. But back to your question of quantum, I believe quantum will be seen more as quantum as a service, as far as the general population accessing it, because of the cost of the systems, right? But even then, people have to realize that even if you had access to a quantum system, it's not going to do your email for you. It's not going to do your web browse. You're not going to web browse on a quantum computer. But think of a quantum computer as kind of like if you was looking at an ocean of audit logs, right? And with your current systems, and even with AI, it can only parse through so much data, per second or a day. What quantum allows you to do is parse through, billions to trillions of records in a second. So it just gives you that extra, like, think of it as a computer on steroids. Like wherever supercomputers are at, it's, times a million. And that's where I think the quantum is going to help with things like in cyber. It's going to help us really parse through stuff and what I call wire speed would be the proper term. And that's where we're going to see the benefits, is where it comes to the same thing that's going to help with pharmaceuticals, coming up with new chemical molecules and chemical materials, etc. All of that heavy data science and data crunching is where quantum will really shine for us. But as far as everyday use, That's the biggest myth I usually dispel with people is like, you're not going to have a quantum computer in your desk. You're not going to be using Google Chrome and surfing the internet or, posting on Reddit. You're going to do that. You will always have classical computer folks. So that's the first thing to know. Always have. And our classical computers will get faster and faster and faster because, again, we haven't completely broken Shor's law. So we got a little ways to go there.
Yeah, quantum as a service. That's an interesting concept. I can definitely see that, especially with the cost involved.
Yeah.
So at the intersection of quantum and AI, because you talked about both quantum and AI, I just want to make sure I understand this. So from your perspective, would AI be more of the vector identifier and quantum be more of the executioner? Or I guess, how do you see that intersection looking? Or is quantum going to amplify AI capabilities down the road? And again, this could be something that's not even in anyone's foreseeable forecast, right? But I'm just curious to get your take. If there is an overlay there, how it will work together, and is there something that I guess organizations shouldn't be looking at today, but maybe anticipating down the road?
So one of the scenarios that I present in my talk, and I give two kind of, one's more of the movie, like Terminator and all the other bad movies you've seen about quantum and AI. In that scenario, what I propose is that imagine, so I'll start with a realistic statement. So Mo Gadot, which is a former Google exec, he's been all over the internet with his clips talking about the IQ. And so about a year plus ago, he said that ChatGPT 4, which was brand new at the time when he was talking about it, he approximated to have a 155 IQ. And that's a very, very important number for folks. So if people want to know, when you hear a lot of people stop at 155, that's before the natural 160, right? 160 to 190 is Einstein range, because when we say who's the smartest genius of all time, 9 out of 10 people is going to say Einstein, okay? And so if Einstein's where it's at, that's the 160 to 190 range, right? So you stop just short of 160, and it's very purposeful. Mo's a very smart, intelligent man. And so, but we went on to say in the next, I think he said 10, 15 years, that AI will have 1,000 plus IQ. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are hear this from me and heard it from Mo, and that says, like, you can't measure an AI by the same IQ standard test that we do with humans. And I get it. There's context. There's a lot of arguments there. But he's talking in a generality, and he's basing it on the fact that they ingest all the knowledge that we have all over the internet, meaning everything that's ever been written, all of history, all the science journals, everything, every post of social media, the whole collective consciousness of the world is in AI, and eventually will be, right? It'll be assimilated in AI. Then once you marry that up to a level of what appears, whether it's sentience or general AI, as they call it, once it approaches that, well, how can it not? Because they already have AIs that will start to develop their own languages. So once we reach that level where it is theoretically 1,000 plus AI, what can it not do? So when I say quantum computing is like the hammer, the tool, the thing that which they'll leverage. So the AI system, imagine it will be the orchestrator of an attack or series of attacks, to where imagine you had a quantum supercomputer with 99.9% error correction, maybe 1 million qubits, but then it's connected to a nation state's 300 plus supercomputers. I won't name any particular nation states, but let's say one in the Asia region has about 300 plus supercomputers that are all interconnected, and it has a quantum 1,000 plus IQ AI system that's using their quantum supercomputer that has a army of 300 plus supercomputers with multiple grid networks and multiple botnets at its disposal to orchestrate very sophisticated and very powerful, and I would call wide leveling attacks on the internet. Imagine that. Because today we have, we can see the botnets, we can largely shut off things, but there's only so much IP space you can shut off before it becomes detrimental to you doing business or operating on the internet. And you marry that up with a system that can think faster than your responses and your countermeasures, that's a pretty dangerous scenario. And I believe we'll reach that world one day, but just as we'll have AI systems also combating those. So a real good show if you folks want something to watch on your weekends. It's aged a little bit, but it's written by the brother of Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan. It was a favorite show of mine from the mid-90s, so you might know this one, Person of Interest. And in this show, it talks about an AI. It's more focused on 9/11 and surveillance stuff, but preventing crime. But it's an interesting show because throughout the show, they deal with these themes of AI. They deal with the themes of AI battling AIs, and it was ahead of its time. But I
Yes.
believe in the future, that's what we're going to have in the cyberspace. We're going to have AI systems battling other AI systems. And just like with the video cards in the early days, you're going to have to upgrade your video card every, 6 months to 12 months with either the newer version or go with a competitor's card. Back in the day of Diamond Multimedia before NVIDIA took the game over. But anyhow, I dated myself again. Sorry about that. But the point was, I believe we're going to have a world where we're going to have an AI system, maybe multiple AI systems if your company can afford it, protecting your networks and data. Then over time, you're going to have to upgrade, switch the platform, and change up your approaches. In fact, if anything, being stagnant. So you're going to hear this term. I'm going to throw out this term for your audience. Crypto agility. You're going to hear this term a lot more as the years progress because people think they get set in, or this is what we're using. This is our bread and butter. You may be in a situation where you might need to rotate your algorithms. You may need to change out your key libraries depending on the hostile environment that you find yourself operating in.
Interesting yet scary times. We talk a lot about how organizations should be prepared and what to expect. What are your thoughts on AI when it comes to individuals, or how it's going to affect and impact society as a whole, and just the way of thinking that we're headed towards? I mean, obviously, even today, you can't really look at something and truly believe it. So
Yeah.
I think that we understand that as security professionals. Not everyone quite grasps that yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. And unfortunately, it's going to be after a negative impact that someone actually understands that. So I'm just curious, how is this going to affect just society as a whole in terms of how we're going to react to each other, how we're going to perceive each other? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'll start off first with that at the highest level, I'm a fan of emerging technology. I'm a fan of disruptive technology, but I'm a huge fan of AI. And I'm going to say for this primary reason, I'm an artist creator. I'm an author. I write fiction and nonfiction, but as an author creator, I love the ability that it enables your imagination to exist. For example, I used to write songs when I was younger in poetry, right? And the problem is I didn't take the time to learn to play a guitar, learn to play a piano. I didn't learn music, right? That's just was my choices. And a lot of people are in that boat too that might have written poetry, written, songs and stuff. Now you can go use an AI and you can make it give you an interpretation of your song with a full band, another singer's voice. It can exist. You're just a prompt away. The beauty and the reason why I love it, you're a prompt away from taking something in your head, an idea, and making it exist there, that you can hear it, you can see it, it exists. And so when you talk about society, I think it's going to inspire, even though some people say, well, AI is not the real writing and doing it the hard way and the old school way. But I say, but you know what? So many people would never create because they feel there's so many barriers from their idea to, I don't know how to play an instrument. I don't know how to do music arrangement. I don't know how to do production. I don't want to load all the software, learn all the tools. Well, guess what? Same thing goes for hackers, right? A lot of people out there was just script kiddies because I'll get this script because all I got to do is double click, execute this, click this, and I'm done. Well, now script kiddies through texting and prompts can now generate massive amounts of code, could generate payloads and all these things that they could never have done on their own. So
Yeah.
it will allow you to create, even though I'm talking in a negative context for a hacker, but in the creative context of being someone that wants to write poetry, music. When you talk about society, the Billboard Hot 100, I think had the number one song in America a few months ago was an AI artist, AI song. Right?
Wow.
Imagine how that's changing the music industry. It's prompting conversation. Even actors are saying, I don't want AI to have a likeness of me. And some are saying, I do because I want my family to still have income derived from my AI likeness. So we got people on all sides of this argument. What we can't argue is that it's not going back away. You can't put it back in Pandora's box. So I will caution as a cyber professional, we do need to have more discussions as professionals about the ethics, about the laws and regulations, right? Because the problem is with technology, governments are usually 3 to 5 years behind, and that's kind of the bad thing there, right? We might do things that might be harmful to society. For example, companies that think that it's the new shiny and they get rid of, like, there was a company more than a year ago in India, the guy fired all of his call center people and replaced it with AI. So many people lost their jobs because of AI. Now, I don't know how that worked for him, whether that was a successful venture into AI, but a lot of businesses, I think, are going to make that jump reaction like, yeah, we could save X amount of millions of dollars and put an AI system that we don't have to worry about smoke breaks, vacations. We can save all this money in the long run, but they don't need to be too short-sighted. They need to think the long game because people still want people-to-people interaction. They want that authenticity of a human being. And the
Yes.
human beings have discretion as well as context that AI hasn't mastered yet. So I will caution a lot any stakeholders or business owners that are watching to just, if you want to experiment in AI, do like we do with any other technology. We always do a phased and small pilot before we start making a rollout across the organization. And I say that because that's the pragmatic, prudent thing to do. But two, if it is going to end up replacing 10, 20, 30% of your workforce, it gives your workforce some time to either learn new tools, switch to other positions in the company. It gives them the benefit of time. And for
Yeah.
the regular folks out there watching this, learn it, embrace it, because the worst thing you could be done with emerging technology is be caught flat-footed. And there are a lot of people out there talking about how AI is going to make, thousands and thousands of multimillionaires. And I do believe that people that embrace that technology and use it, whether to create music, to create businesses, anything you put in the prompt, it will help structure out a business plan for you. It'll help you figure something out. So why not use that? It's almost like, I don't think I use Google that much anymore. I use a GPT even to do my searches and to even get like just beyond the initial, like, hey, give me this information, but give me, 5 other conflicting reports sometimes. Cause like say, I believe I have my biases, right? So I'll say, hey, give me the report that supports this thinking I have, but give me the top 5 voices that speak against it. Because I also want to read the other side, because it helps me when I do go in discussions or debates with folks over perspectives of technology or approaches, so that I know their arguments already. And so whether it helps me be a better debater in that room, or it may even change my mind or appreciate their perspective, or there'll be some information that I might have overlooked. And I was like, hey, that's actually not bad. I might want to incorporate into that thinking, because none of us is 100% right all of the time. But AI is definitely a augmenter. It's like, 50xing yourself. So why wouldn't you take advantage of it? But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, opening up your mind to your imagination and having it exist is a beautiful feeling. And I applaud all the people out there every day that's discovering the benefits of generative AI and helping them create. So for society, I'm looking forward to more music from people that we haven't heard of, more artists getting an opportunity to shine. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's redefined creativity. It's the way that we need to learn to create. I don't think it's going to completely make creativity extinct. It's just you got to think of new ways to help augment that. And again, like programming. I'm not a programmer. I've never been a programmer, but now I can spin up Claude Code and write a program that I've always wanted to develop to help
Mhm.
me, even if it's just getting to, automate some, workflow within podcast development.
Mhm.
It's things like that that force you to think, but now you just have, this amazing tool at your disposal. Mm.
And just what you said there, so many people say, "Oh, I had the idea for this, and I just didn't have the money or whatever." It's not about money anymore, because
Yeah.
people think I would have to hire developers, I would have to hire a marketing person, a salesperson. It could do it all for you now, and so
Yeah.
it's what I call removing the excuses from now. You can take your ideas, and they can legitimately live. It's just up to you to do the prompt, and you're like I said, you're a prompt away from achieving that idea to reality, and I'm all for it. I love it.
Yeah. I agree. I'm a natural pessimist, and I think just being in security, it's always like, all right, well, how can this be bad? But you really do have to embrace it and recognize how this is just going to revolutionize how productive we are with work and not in work either. Like just by having that tooling. I'm just curious, like I always think about how you mentioned the person to person interaction. I'm just concerned with losing that. Like I don't wanna lose that person to person interaction down the road, and I think AI in some cases are supplementing some of those purposes, right? Having a companion or having someone to go talk to as a counselor or things
Yeah.
like that. I think that's good and bad. I hate to be the pessimist, but like how do we ensure that it stays for good? I don't think you completely can ensure that, but I guess how can you kind of future proof that technology from, disruption at a mass level or a mass scale.
Those recent stories of how Grok was undressing photos of people and so forth, and that was a little bit of controversy. And so, talk about doing good and staying good. I think there's always going to be challenges because as it develops and grows, it's going to have those little what I call the blind sites that, blind spots as we go through and it matures and gets better and stronger and powerful. When it comes to human interaction, here's what I'll say. Back in the pandemic and COVID, where we all had a, shelter in place, first it was curb the spread, and then we know it was a year later, and we're still arguing over what mask to wear, where to wear a mask, how many feet to be away, all the arguments aside, politics aside. But what it really did, it caused a extreme exponential rise into live streaming and podcasts, right? Because people were stuck at home and they wanted to interact. Why did live streaming? And there was things like people sleep streaming, like people watching people sleep. I grew up, I'm the kind of person, if I watch someone playing a video game long enough, I want the controller. I want to be the master of my destiny in the Mario, Zelda, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, whatever I'm playing. I want to be playing. I don't want to watch someone play. That's just me. But we have a generation of people that love to watch other people play. And it could be some arguments I hear about this as well. They're a professional. They're much better at it than I am. Because again, that whole 20 hours of sticking to something to be proficient or really good in, a lot of people just get self-defeated too early on. But people do find genuine enjoyment, because sometimes it's a commentary of watching someone experience the game and how they're commenting. I get it, but you're watching someone's real life happening, and it's that authenticity. Even with live streams where people just walking through their town, like a day in their life, people were connecting to authenticity because that's something real. And we live in a world where our news is fake. We can't trust all this clickbait that's fed to us through social media platforms. So we're starving for human connection. I don't think that ever goes away. You mentioned like people looking to the GPTs for therapy and for counseling and to help them with their problems. Hey, I'm just happy people talking to somebody, something, even if it's an entity, because it's better to keep it inside, right? And so even though there might be some ethical pitfalls with that, and that's something the law has to figure out, but if it's 9 times out of 10, or even greater than that, I would hope, is helping people, then I'm all for it. If it's helping people talk through something, talk through trauma, talk through an issue, if it's keeping people from harming themselves, then I'm 100. Now, there's been a few reports about where it does, help, or not help people, and people have harmed themselves. I have not fully read those reports, so I can't speak authoritatively to that. But generally speaking, if it gives someone an outlet or ability to talk. Now, but your question focuses on the human-to-human interaction. What I hope is that if AI helps us like in the workplace, I hope that we live in a society that eventually gets it right to get a 4-day work week. Give us 3 days off a week, right? If we could achieve that as society, or if, and again, I don't want to get into politics, but if all the talk of tariffs makes us all wealthy, which I highly doubt, 360 million plus people are going to be infinitely wealthy overnight. That's another discussion. But the point is, even if AI can make a larger portion of our population have more free time, let's just start with time, regardless of money, because I think there's always going to be levels of incomes in society and so forth. But that aside, let's just talk time. Let's say for people that are still remote working, hybrid work environment, if you're able to knock out your work and have the luxury of being at work from home, if you could knock out a 40-hour work week within, let's say, half the time because of AI, that's time that you've got back to spend with your kids when they get home off the bus, cook meals at home. I think that's where we'll see those little pockets of time being recouped and repurposed for family, or for setting up a side hustle, starting up that online website selling stuff, drop shipping or whatever that people do these days. But the point being, if it gives you time, just like when we were stuck at home not working, I was advocating for people, hey, learn to play a musical instrument, learn a new language, learn a new skill, take a cert. Get ready so that when we go back to work, you could start a new career. You could rebuild yourself. Don't just sit at home watching the news, listen to people, talking heads argue about which face mask and this political point versus that political point. That was all noise. The real opportunity was, hey, you're forced to be home, but take advantage and make something positive out of that negative. Unfortunately, not a lot of people did it, but some people did. And I'm really proud that some people did take that opportunity and kind of aikido that negativity into something positive. But when it comes to AI, I hope people can aikido the use of the tool into something positive for themselves, whether they're helping themselves start a business, learn something new, figure out a problem in their lives, navigate through some difficult, challenging times, whatever it is. If it uses it to, get through something, free up their time, because at the end of the day, time is the one commodity we can't buy more of, and we will pay every penny we have to have some more when we're at the end of it.
Love it, man. I love it. So I know we're running up on time. I do want to ask you this, as I mentioned before, you do a lot of traveling, you do a lot of public speaking in all of your travels. And since this is BarCode, I do need to ask you, what is the most unique bar or bar type venue that you've ever been to, and what made it unique to you?
Oh, there's so many places that come to mind. The one that popped in my head first, there's a karaoke bar called Woodball in Bangkok, Thailand, and I love karaoke, but it's a little hole in the wall place. And I have a friend of mine that just started working for the Department of State there, and so I met him there, and he never did karaoke, but we cleared out the bar of all the soju that they had, and we were just singing everything from Michael Jackson to rock. I'm a big fan of alternative rock like Fuel, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica. I'm singing all that stuff, and the Thai people are like, "What?" System of a Down, Chop Suey is more like my go-to opening song because once you lay that down, the gauntlet's been thrown, right?
Yes, yes,
But
that's a good
that's
one.
one of my favorite good times in Bangkok is at the Woodball Karaoke, just off the BTS there. Other places around the world, man, there's been so many places, man, that I have been. But that's the first thing that popped in my head. There's been some cool places in Berlin, like little, bars. I like going to. I recently went to Ireland, Dublin, and this is on my Formula Me YouTube channel, where I went to all the oldest bars in the city. So I did like a little 4 or 5 bar tour, of my day there, and just getting to talk to the bartenders that would share a little bit about the history. This one bar, I think it was in, was it Dublin or was it in Belfast? I think we were in Belfast. So this bar in Belfast, you talked about this one smoking room of all the scandals and things that happened in this back smoking room. It was just amazing to hear these stories. And of course, I grew up in Louisiana, so New Orleans,
Oh,
Bourbon
yeah.
Street, there's a lot of cool places there. I will shout out one place is Coop's Place, right off of Decatur Street, folks. If you're ever down there walking around the Vieux Carré, Coop's Place has smoked duck quesadillas. It's worth the trip.
Wow, this is in New Orleans?
In New Orleans, yeah, off of
Okay.
Decatur.
I've never been there. It's on my list,
Man,
though.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely go, man. It's the fridge culture, it's over the years, with the Katrina thing that happened, 10 plus years ago, it kind of devastated the city, but they've come back really strong. It's always a good time in Bourbon Street. They've it's done a lot of cleanup over the years, but what I will say about Bourbon, there's just any place you duck in, they're going to have their signature drink, where you get a hurricane at one place, a hand grenade at another. There's a couple Irish bars that have frozen Irish coffee. So if you got a little bit of a sweet tooth and you like something that's almost like a Irish coffee milkshake, basically delicious. I think Aaron Rose is one of the 2 places, and the other one is Molly's on Decatur, are the 2 that have the frozen Irish coffee. Of course, Clover Cafe is famous because it's like I think Brad Pitt filmed a scene from a movie there. I mean, anything that shoots along Bourbon, they usually have a scene from that diner. Get a burger from there. Shoot, Port of Call, which is a little bit off of from the Bourbon Street area. If you go to Port of Call, they have this very strong drink. They will only serve you 2, I believe, is their rule.
Wow.
It's that strong. But they have a phenomenal burger at Port of Call. So again, shout out to those places. Really good if you're ever in New Orleans. And hey, if you go, hit me up and I'll send you even more. The Adolfo's, oh God. Anybody knows, if you walk a little bit away from Bourbon Street, there's a little area called, it's called Frenchman Street. And on Frenchman Street, there's a place called Adolfo's. They're the best steak in the city. Hands down. They're only open in the evenings on a couple of days of the week. You got to get in line like 30 minutes before they open because they have like maybe 10, 13 tables upstairs. So people get there about half hour early. There is a bar there so you can order some drinks and wait in line. But get there and get in line so you can get in early and get a table.
Okay, well, I just heard last call here. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah.
All right. If you opened a cybersecurity themed bar, what would the name be, and what would your signature drink be called?
Oh, goodness, that's a great question. Actually, I don't know what I'd call a bar, but I could talk about my latest presentation. I'd probably name it Insecurity. It would have a lowercase in and capital security.
Love
I'd
that.
probably name all the different drinks of the format to hard drive would probably be like a vodka and some tequila mixed drink. I call it format to hard drive. And then adding the double shot of it would be low level format to hard drive, stuff like that. I'd use all the old school terms. I try to maybe serve a drink or maybe have my plates look like the 5 1/4 inch floppy drives or a floppy disk.
Yes.
Maybe that's what I do. I'd serve tapas on little 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. In fact, they're packed away, but I have some 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. But I would do that. I would serve it on floppy disk, 3.5 inches to be my coasters for the drinks. I'd have all little kitschy items like that in the bar.
I love that. Well, I'm going to open BarCode one day, and I'm definitely going to call you up because I love those ideas.
I hope you design it.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, Jim. It was great having you on and great catching up with you finally. I love what you're doing. Can't wait to see what you're dropping next. For the listeners that want to follow you or get in touch, where can they find you?
It's a simple Google search. You can do Jim West author, Jim West cyber. There's so many pages of all the stuff I've done, but you can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best from a cybersecurity perspective, but jimwestauthor.com if you just want to see what creative works that I'm doing and I'm into. Because, outside of cyber, I do a lot of fictional and content creation, and I got a few YouTube channels. And
Very cool, man. Well, thanks again. And thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review if you enjoyed today's episode. Tell a friend and visit us at barcodesecurity.com. We'll catch you next time.